us today. Today we are learning all about the basics of polymer clay and especially making beads with polymer clay and then making bracelets and keychains with those beads that you've made. So we're going to go through the whole process. If you are brand new to jewelry making or brand new to polymer clay, this is a great class for you because we're going to go through how to condition clay, how to work with it, how to bake it, and then the basics of putting it together into jewelry. So let's switch to the other camera and take a look at some of the projects that we're going to be making today. And they are here. So everyone's seen these kind of beaded bracelets that are also a keychain. These are stretchy bracelets, and you can put a keychain finding and some keys on there. But each of these beads are made individually from polymer clay. And you can see some of the beads have some patterns to them. Some of them are solids. And there's a full range of colors available. So that's one style of keychain, which is kind of like a bracelet keychain. Then we're going to do this sort of inline keychain together, which with just a stack of beads, and show you how to do that as well. So we are ready to get started. We're going to walk through the supplies that you need for that and get started here. So my name is Stephanie Menor. I'm going to be walking you through all of the wonderful parts of polymer clay. So polymer clay typically is solid like this. This is kind of a standard polymer clay that you might find out there. Michaels, however, has a special kind of new polymer clay that has the patterns in it. So you can see this clay has a leopard pattern in it. We're going to be showing you how to make beads both ways, with solid and with patterns. So let's start with the pattern because this is kind of the newest thing out there. This is what that looks like when it comes out of the box. And this is just like an acetate little blister. Hang on to this. Don't throw that away. I like to store my clay. In fact, I'm going to show you off to the side. I have some stored clay. I put my clay back in there, and it just is it's a great way to store the clay, and it will stop it from getting too dry. So this is a great thing to hang on to. This is the clay itself, and it also is wrapped in a protective wrapper here. So let's get into that. And this is what you have. So in this leopard pattern, you can see from the side that that pattern goes all the way through. This isn't just a pattern that's printed on the top of that clay. Artisans used many different colors to create these long canes of each color and put them together in different patterns. So leopard is just one of the patterns available. So that is the first thing that you need is clay. Second thing you need that you might need if you choose to is a working surface that is smooth. And this is a piece of tile that I got at the local home improvement store. So I like to work on a piece of tile. It just streamlines things for me. It makes it a little bit easier. So also I have tools. So there is a whole tool set available that I'm going to grab the pieces of right now. So this is the tool set at Michaels. The thing that I took out of here is a roller. So this is an acrylic roller that we're going to use to roll out the clay. And then I'll show you how the rest of these tools are used. But each one is double-sided. You can see you've got one side here that can give you different effects. You've got a sharp pokey tool. And inside this case is a blade. So this is the blade. It's extremely sharp. That's going to help us make some cuts that we need. Okay, so I've got my roller. The other tool that is very handy but not absolutely necessary are these thickness guides. So it comes with 4 guides and they are color coded. So the green, you can see here, it's etched 4.5 mm. So that is going to help us roll our clay out like this to an even thickness of 4.5 mm. The white set is 3 mm, which is marked here, but it's very, oh, there you can see it, 3 mm. So that you place on either side of the clay. We're going to use that to roll. Other things that you will need, you're going to need all of your stringing materials for making the bracelets. You're going to need some findings like these keychain findings right here, a couple jump rings, and then this tool, when we get into making of the beads, this is a bead maker. We're going to show you how that works. And of course you need an oven. So polymer clay is an oven baked clay. There are plenty kinds of clay out there. You have the clay that is like a ceramic that needs to be baked in a kiln. You have air dry clay that dries in the air. And you have polymer clay, which you bake in the oven. So very, very easy to bake in the oven. It's at a low temperature of 250 degrees for 15 to 20 minutes. And so what I have off to the side here is a baking tray with a piece of parchment paper, and that's what I like to bake on. You can do this in a regular conventional oven. You can do this in a toaster oven. And let's see, get some buttons here. And just not in a microwave. You cannot put this in the microwave. So it needs to be sort of a traditional oven situation there. That might be all of the tools and supplies. As we go through, I'll let you know if I didn't mention something. So let's get started, as I said, with this patterned clay. So we have our acrylic roller, and I just want to start rolling this out. So you have to work with this pattern clay a little differently than your traditional polymer clay because you have to preserve those patterns that are in there. So I would say sort of gently rolling this out. I'm not pressing with all my body weight too hard in any one section because I don't want to create divots and I don't want to create cracks. Keeping my thickness guides to the side. This clay, when we started, was about 5 millimeters. So in jewelry world, everything is in the metric system. So we do measure things in millimeters rather than in inches. So this started out as 5 millimeters. These thickness guides are at 3 millimeters. So we are trying to bring this down. And so I'm just going to keep going here. Now, thank you guys for joining us. If you have any questions, go ahead and use the chat function. We have some folks on the line that are going to help to answer any of your questions. We don't want you to leave this class with some unanswered questions. So please feel free to use the chat, and we are happy to answer any questions that you have. Okay, so I've rolled that. I'm kind of using my finger to see, am I at the 3 mm level or not? I'm not quite. I'm probably at about 4 mm right now. So I just keep rolling. Now, if you have if you are a polymer clay enthusiast and you have a pasta machine, it's a very common way that people like to work with their clay. You can condition clay, which we'll talk more about conditioning in a minute, but you can condition your clay on a pasta machine, obviously use that to roll it out to an even thickness. Those are great, but I'm showing you the handmade way. Okay, so we're looking pretty good here. That is about 3 mm. So you can see it doesn't spread that much. The pattern is mostly preserved. So I'm going to use this pattern clay to do two things. First of all, to take some clay to make into beads, but also, let me bring my example keychain out here. Here's my example keychain. You can see it has the beads made from clay, but it also has this charm made from clay. So I'm starting a little bit backwards by starting with this charm. So to make the charm, we need to use some cutters. So these are clay cutters. They're just like mini cookie cutters, except these ones are made of plastic. You can get a really nice sharp cutting edge with the plastic. And they come in a lot of different fun shapes and sizes. I'm just going to find one here that I want to use. Okay, so this is a square / diamond, so that's what I'm going to use here. And I just line that up. The other thing I can do, and I didn't mention this, is use some cornstarch. I always have a little bowl of cornstarch here. And if you dip your cutter in the cornstarch, you can kind of tap it off a little bit. That just makes sure that this cutter is not going to stick. And so I can line this up and look through there to see where I want my charm to go. And that looks good. Pressing down and pulling straight back up. I can go in again. I can make more of these. Okay. And so through this process, you're going to be able to make things that look like this. This is an earring. Also, the earrings that I have on are made in a very similar way, where you have two shapes that are then baked and then joined with a jump ring here. Okay. So let's pretend that you filled up that shape with anything that you want to bake. I'm using my blade here. This blade came in the basic tool set. And cutting that so that I can remove this excess. Okay, so these are my little excess pieces here. This piece, if I can lift it up, which it started breaking, if you can't lift it up, go underneath with a blade. And that will help you lift that up. Okay, so I'm left with these two pieces here. I can go in with a sharp tool like this and kind of clean up along the edges. There's really not much to clean up here. I'm being a perfectionist. But this is the great part of working on a surface like this, because this tile that I'm working on can go straight into the oven. So I don't need to mess with these at all. They can just stay sitting there, and then I pick this whole thing up and go and take it to a preheated 250-degree oven. So that is kind of your first step in creating this keychain, is creating a charm that you're going to hang. So that charm obviously has a hole here where this jump ring is going to go through it. So I like to show you a lot of different ways to do the same thing. If you wanted to create the hole at the top of this now, before you bake it, you can. Just with a sharp tool like this, a toothpick, you can obviously go in there, kind of work it around a little bit. And when it comes out of the oven, it'll have a perfectly shaped hole there. My personal preference is I like to create the hole after it bakes, but that's just me. And the reason I like to create it after it bakes is because then the holes are just a little bit more precise and consistent. And we're going to make those afterwards with this little hand drill. So I'll show you how that works. All right, so basically I'll make the hole over here since I already made the hole that one. So basically those are ready to go into the oven, 250 degrees, 15 to 20 minutes. I always err on the side of more time in the oven than less time, because with polymer clay, if it's well baked, it will not be, here's a piece of baked clay. If it's well baked, it will not be brittle. See how this has some flexibility to it, like this? If this wasn't baked quite enough, it might snap in bending it. You don't want brittle jewelry. So always we recommend to err on the side of baking it a little bit more than a little bit less. So here are some examples. Let's pretend that that went into the oven. We move this off to the side here. And these are some things that have already been baked, have already come out of the oven. And then, you know, this is the fun part of putting them together into an earring. Those two pieces look great. These two pieces could be little stud earrings. You could change it out so that this earring goes with that. I mean, a lot of different combinations. But when you're ready, I'll show you how to use this drill to make the hole. So if you didn't make the hole beforehand, this is how you do it. So this is a little hand drill, also known as a pin vise. This drill bit, I believe, is 2 millimeters. And so you just line that up onto where you want that hole to be and start twisting. And just a few seconds is all it takes to pop out the back of that. And I'm just reversing to get that out. And then you have a little hole at the top, and it's just clean and perfect. So that is why I prefer using this to make any type of charm. For a earring like this, let's say I wanted to connect these two into an earring, I would need to put a hole here so that this can connect to this. And then this little piece, actually, I need 2 different attachment points. So I would need a hole down here to connect to the arch, and a hole here to connect to my earring stuff, my earring hardware. For example, this earring. So that is in the same construction. You need 1 hole here, 1 hole here, and 1 hole here. And then to put it all together, you need a jump ring, and an ear wire. So if we have time at the end, I will walk you through exactly all of those steps to create these into an earring. But the main focus of this class is bead making and using those beads in a keychain. So let's switch gears just a little bit here. I'm gonna move this. I'm going to move that, and now we're going to talk about solid clay. So making beads, these are all beads that we've made. Making beads out of polymer clay is super fun. As I said, patterns are solid, but the way you work with them is just a little bit different. This is because you need a tiny bit of clay, this is a great way to use up all of your leftover clay. So this is how I store my clay that's balled up like this, is in saran wrap, and I just wrap it up like this and keep that in an old shoebox, actually. If it's a flat piece of clay that I've already flattened out, I use these things to hold my extras. So great way to use up leftover clay. Which I have these pieces from the last step. Those are my leftover clay pieces from the last step. And now we're going to start talking about this little wonder, which makes beads. And let's just take a look at it. It has 2 pieces, top and a bottom. And the 2 pieces slide together. They have channels where these fit together perfectly. And it has 3 channels there on the side. This makes a 10 mm, a 6 mm, a 10 mm, an 8 mm, and a 6 mm size bead. And that is what these circles represent on the front here. It has these ergonomic handholds for you to go back and forth, and this helps to create a perfectly sphere bead for you. So let's see how it works. I'm going to take some clay. This is just some leftover clay from the first step. And just gently in my hands, I want to kind of make it round. This is not perfect. It's just making it slightly rounder. And you can put it in any of these 3 channels. As I said, this is 6, 8, and 10 mm. All of our projects are using the 10 mm. I just put that in there, and then these little notches slide together, and then I go back and forth. And that is shaping that bead into this. Okay, so that's how you use it with patterned clay. So you can see once this goes through the process, the leopardness of it kind of gets lost a little bit, but that is natural since those colors go all the way through and you're kind of working those colors in different ways. The result is not going to have you know, your patterns are going to get a little bit distorted in there. That's the basics on how to do it. All right, so that's how to work with pattern. Now let's switch gears here to solid clay. And I'm going to grab a little piece of solid clay, actually a bigger piece than this. And the reason I make a distinction between the solid clay and the pattern clay is, well, first of all, solid clay is available anywhere. So if you have worked with polymer clay in the past, you will, this is the kind that you've encountered. What I'm doing right now is conditioning the clay. Conditioning is just a process of warming the clay up. So as I'm just like rolling it and kneading it with my hands, my body heat is transferring to the clay. So I'm actually warming it up, and you will feel after about 30 seconds of doing this, you will feel the clay gets a little bit stickier and it gets actually warmer, much more pliable, malleable, easier to work with. Okay, so this is well-conditioned clay. You can see that it just is soft. Now compare that with unconditioned clay. You can see that there are pieces flaking off of it. When I sort of bend it over, it just like breaks on itself. This is unconditioned clay. But if I worked that with my hands, it will get to this. Conditioning is important when working with clay for a lot of reasons. And one of them is when you want to make beads, you can use these things on the front. Can anyone guess what these are? These are clay portioners. So if I want to make a perfectly sphere 10 mm bead, I need a very specific amount of clay to do that. And this helps me portion my clay. So I just kind of stick it in there, and any of this excess I can just kind of wipe off. And this is the perfect amount of clay that I need for a 10 mm bead. Just get it out of there. You can use a tool, kind of get it out of there. And I'm using the clay itself to get it out of there. Okay, so this is, according to my tool here, the exact amount of clay needed for a 10 mm bead. So again, roughly roll it in my hands. Place it in the correct channel. Put the top on. Give it a little roll. And very important to note, if you see here that little bit of like black, when I rolled this bead, it has black clay. Clay will, and you can see, you want to clean this really well between each change of color clay. So if you're going from a black clay to a light colored clay, which I was doing, you're going to have some residue. Make sure you clean that off. Baby wipes, you know, warm soap and water is really all you need. I can get that off with my hand if I needed to. But this is what you come out with, is very smooth. I'm going to put that in there again. A very smooth and round bead. Okay. So what do you do from here? Well, again, I like to show you multiple ways of doing the same thing. You are going to find what works best for you. So way one is to bake it before we put the hole in it. So here I have my baking tray. I have my piece of parchment paper, and I just put my bead there and put it into the oven. 250 degrees, 20 minutes. So that's way one. Pretty simple. Way two is I want to create that hole in the bead before I'm going to use this as an example, before I bake it. And so to do that, you want to have a sharp tool like this. You can also use a toothpick. And I like to place this down onto a solid surface so that I'm looking down the bead, and using my tool, I want to go all the way down through it. This is the best way if you want to make sure that the hole is going through the bead correctly. So it pops out on this other side, which I can kind of wiggle it a little bit. You can kind of see that it's right there. You can see that it's popped through. And then gently remove that. To bake this, you can, of course, just put it on your baking sheet like that. You can also, another way is use a toothpick. These are extra long toothpicks, but regular size toothpicks will work. I can kind of put that on a toothpick, and I've created this thing over here that I bake my beads in. And I just took a lump of leftover clay and used this toothpick to put holes in it. And I just stick that in there and put this whole thing into the oven. So I can bake multiple beads at once like this. And, we're in a kind of a cool oven. It's only 250 degrees, so it's not going to burn these toothpicks. This one is not baked. That's the one that I just put in. These are all baked already. So you can see the toothpick just pops right out of my little makeshift stand here. And then the bead just pops right out of the top too. So a little note in general is you are hand making these beads. They are not going to be perfect. Like this bead, for example, I can see that I got the edge of my fingernail in there at some point before I baked it. So it's not perfect, but none of the clay beads that you're going to buy on the open market are perfect either. This is a product that is made by hand. And so I happen to like these little natural imperfections. And you can see I'm going to pull all these out of here. Go. None of these are perfect. But they will look beautiful when they are on a handmade bracelet. Okay, so way one is make the hole before you bake it. And that is what I've done all of these instances. Way two is don't worry about making the hole until after you've baked it. So again, we're going to pretend like I've baked, and we get something like this. This is a little swirly bead that I just made. I didn't make the hole. I just baked it. And you can use, again, this hand drill for creating the hole through there. So using firm pressure, it's just going to bore out a perfect hole. You want to be careful because it's easy to go sideways. Even this bead, if I hold it straight up to the camera, like it's not perfectly centered where that came through. Again, these are a handmade creation. They don't have to be perfect. We don't want them to be perfect. We want them to look like it's something that was made with love and made with our hands. So there's the hole on one side. I've found that when you're using this, it's nice to go through both sides, and hopefully that channel that you made will connect. Okay. And this bead is ready to use, as are all of my other beads that I pre-made the hole before I baked. Okay, so at the end of the day, you're going to end up with a bunch of really pretty beads. Some of them are going to have colors. Some of them are going to have solid. They're going to be slightly wonky. They're not perfect, but that is where the charm is. So now let me get here's my charm that I made in that first step. I'm going to keep it. And we're going to make this keychain first. So this keychain again has a charm. It has 5 beads and it is strung on cording. This is actually bamboo cording. Bamboo is a wonderful material to use, very, very eco-friendly since that stuff grows like crazy. So bamboo is a great natural cord to use. And this is what it looks like. It's probably about a 1.5 mm width of cord, which work perfectly since the holes in these beads that I've done have a 2 mm hole. All right, so we are going to need a keychain. We are going to need some jump rings. And I have a big old box of those things here. I'll pull out a big one. And this actually has several jump rings to create a string of them that makes like a little chain. So I'm going to pull out some of these, maybe 4. Okay, so this is how we start to string things up. Start with your key ring. This key ring size is a little bit smaller. I believe that this size is about 18 millimeters. I don't have mine. Wait, do. No, it's more than 18. The outside dimensions are about 24 mm. But these come in standard sizes. And then you want to take your string. You need about, I would say about 10 inches. But you can just kind of eyeball that. I have 10 inches. I'm going to fold it in half. Trying to find that middle point. Fold it in half. This is the middle. Okay. So the first thing you're going to do is make a lark's head knot. And that is something you've probably been doing your whole life, but never knew the name of it. It's called lark's head. It's something that where you find the middle of string and then you put it around the object that you're attaching to. You see, I've just done that. And then the tails come through the head, if that makes sense at all. I'm pulling these tails through. I'm trying to do this so that you can see what I'm doing. And just pull it tight. That's called a lark's head knot. And now you know the name of it. And that's how we start our key ring here. And then we're going to do just a regular overhand knot. This is going to just secure that top. Oh, wait, no, got to start again. And pull that knot. Oh, ha, 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 ha. Even as I was saying it, I didn't do it right, but no problem. If you ever get messed up, use your tools here to open that knot back up. Even as I was saying it, move the knot all the way toward the key ring. I messed it up. Let's start again. Okay, redo. Another piece of cord. Find the middle. Another key ring. Lark's head. So take these tails through the little loop that you made. Pull tight. Second is a overhand knot where we're just putting those tails through itself. And you want to control the knot so that you're not pulling it tight until it's where you want it to go, which is right up the top. So now we have a lark's head knot and a regular overhand knot. And now we're ready to string some beads. So the beads that we string are actually going to go over both. They go over both strings. So to make that a little easier, sometimes what you can do is cut the end so you have a fresh cut. And here are my beads. To make this easier, you might want to use a Bead-A-Lawn Big Eye needle. Have you guys seen one of these before? It just looks like a giant needle, but it's actually, well, it is a giant needle, but it's called a Big Eye needle because in the middle here, there it is. Can you see what that is? It's very thin, but the whole thing is an eye of a needle. The whole needle is an eye. And this is used a lot in beading because it just makes it easier. Oh, hang on a sec, do these? Okay, not everyone has a hole, so we're going to spend some time putting these holes together. So I've strung this on, I'm putting the needle through, and it's not working. So you know what? Let's put some holes in some beads. All right. Some of the things are handy. You can also get different size bits for these, because this bit is detachable and you can have different sizes. All right, I'm going to try again putting it through here. That hole that I just made, you can see it goes through a lot easier. And this is just one little tool, one little trick is when you get to this point, you might want to use some jewelry pliers to pull the needle all the way through. And it didn't pull through. Okay, that's all right. You know, maybe we better save that needle. Okay, so backing up here, what we're going to do is we're going to string 5 beads onto both strings. And this is not cooperating with me at the moment, but I know you will have better results than I'm having right now. So you want to string 5 beads, and then all you do is another knot at the bottom here, another overhand knot to create a knot at the bottom. So we're just going to pretend. That part's the 3D part is the easiest. So let's pretend that we've done that. Goes all the way through, and you make a knot here at the bottom. You can add a jump ring here, and this is where we're going to attach our charm. Now we have already made a hole in that charm. We need a jump ring. Which we open like that, and we feed through our charm. All the way through, and then I'm going to kind of halfway close this. And let's just put this on our open jump ring. And there's our little charm. Okay, so the trouble with the bamboo cord is you need quite a large hole for it to go through. So make sure you're using something that has at least a 2 mm size hole, since the cord itself is about 1.5 mm and you need to have room for that needle to get through. So that's how you're going to get these results. All right, moving on from that, which did not go well, we are going to string one of these bracelets, and this uses thinner cord. So this is stretchy cord. This is about a 1 mm stretchy cord. So Stretch Magic is like one of the most common brands that you'll see of this. And Stretch Magic has two, I believe it's two sizes. They have a 0.7 mm string and a 1 mm string. This is the 1 mm. This is longer. So you want about a piece that is about 12 inches. And back to my beads, which we are going to gather all of my beads that have a hole already in them. Some of these do, some of these don't. All right. Again, any questions, go ahead and ask those in the chat. I am just creating holes in these beads so that I can use them. It has a hole. And of course, Michael sells a whole wall of beautiful, beautiful beads. So if this process doesn't excite you, some people love the hands-on, some people don't. You can, of course, use these same techniques with pre-made beads. I think I saw something in the chat, what temperature the oven is set at. It's 250 degrees for about 20 minutes. Okay, so more string. So here we have our stretchy cord, and we are going to start stringing beads, and you need to have some really good eyes for this. It's hard to get through. You can use that big eye bead needle. I broke my needle on the last step, but you would string your string through here and then use that needle, flexible needle, to go through. Of course, I broke my needle. So that's not going to work for us. So let's just pretend that I can just go through. So as you're stringing, you do want to secure the other end of the string. You can do that with a clip or a piece of tape, something that will make sure that all of these beads that you strung aren't just going to come off the other end. So I want to make sure to remember that. This process will be easier when you have a working bead needle, I promise. Or if you are using holes, beads with a little bit larger holes, like these. These are the beads that I made where I poked the hole and then baked them on toothpicks. That ended up with a little bit of a larger hole than the ones made from the hand drill. Oh, come on, you. Get through there. All right, doesn't want to go through. All right, so let's pretend that you have strung all of your beads. This is about 18 10 mm beads. will make this size, which is for an average wrist. It's about 7 to 7.5 inches in circumference. That is for an average wrist. If you want them to be bigger, maybe you use 20 beads instead of 18. Or if your beads are bigger, your overall circumference needs to increase because there's more of a distance between where the string goes and where it fits around your wrist. Okay, so once you have those, I just have these four, but we're pretending. I'm also going to string on my keychain finding. And this is how you create the knot. So this is the same knot you would use if you're making friendship bracelets, any type of stretchy bracelet. Is actually very simple. And I'm not going to do it on here because you can't see that. I'm going to do it on here. Something that you can see. I have this cord. This is like a cord for like electronics, but this works perfectly for you to be able to see what I'm doing. So the first thing you do is a regular overhand knot, like that. Okay. Everyone knows how to do that, hopefully. Regular overhand knot. Now, to make this more secure so that that knot won't come out, the only thing you have to do is put the end through there one more time. And now this isn't an overhand knot. This is called a surgeon's knot. So when I pull this, it locks onto itself and it will be very, very strong. Okay, so I'm going to do that same thing with this cord. So simple overhand knot first, and you want to make the world's smallest bracelet. Now, you want to pull that down so that your bracelets are making a circle. And then before you knot it, you go through one more time. So I'm taking that through the middle one more time and pulling it tight. Okay. And then you just cut the excess. And that's how you make the world's smallest bracelet. But in your world, it will look something like this. And that's all she wrote, folks. I hope that you have found something interesting in this. Since we still have time, I did promise that if we had time, I would show you how to make just like a regular earring, something like this. And I have these parts to work with. Okay, so to make that, I obviously need to make a hole. I already did make a hole on this arch. I need to make 2 holes on this one. So one at the bottom. And one at the top, directly perpendicular from, or parallel to, I guess I should say, that first one. So here I have one hole here and one hole here that's harder to see. And now I need to connect this to this with a jump ring, the largest jump ring that you have. I'm actually going to use gold. And you open your jump ring like that. We're going to slide that through. And before we close it, we also slide on that top piece. And then using 2 pliers is easier than using your hands. We're going to bring those 2 ends both back together. And then another jump ring. Open that up on the top here. And before you close that, you add your earring binding. Like this. Lots of different earring findings out here. This is probably the most common though. Just slide that on our open jump ring, close it up, and there we have it, an earring. So you can see the fun in this is creating different shapes that will work together, sort of designing what shapes look best and what match your preferences. So there we go. Through those same steps, you can take it a step farther. We did this in our Christmas class. We made a little snowman earring. You can make very simple earrings that have a this top piece is something I made from clay, and that little bead is a bead that we bought, and it just combines handmade and bought items. You can use all one type of clay. This has 3 pieces, 1, 2, 3, or you can use different variations of clay, mixing solids and patterns together. And this has 3 pieces. This one's pretty cool. This one has 4 pieces. It's one big center piece with sort of some petals to the side, but all the same technique. All right. All right, guys. So that's what I have for you today. We are doing classes for the remainder of January, Mondays at the same time. So take a look. We have one more polymer clay class in January, and we have a UV resin class, which I highly recommend if you're interested in trying that. So thank you so much for joining us, for staying with us to the end. I'm sorry my needle broke, but you know, this is crafting and this is live. We do our best. So thanks a lot, guys, and we'll see you here next time.